Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host, and I'm joined by the film encyclopedia man, Boaz Dix. We are a couple of filmmakers on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on VOD. Myself and Boaz pick our favourite film from that topic, or team up against a guest and battle it out to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 2. So our pick then for Robin Williams films is Dead Poets Society. I gave Boaz a choice of 4 films to go with. Dead Poets Society, Mrs. Doubtfire, Good Will Hunting, and the cinematic masterpiece that is Flubber, which I very much watched over and over and over again as a kid, Flubber.
Same.
But I'm guessing you picked Dead Poets Society, Boaz, mainly. Yes, you're into poetry a lot, but I'm guessing it's because you were just fascinated to find out why human beings cry. Is that right? Or... Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
So I feel like this podcast is now an investigation for you of like why people cry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like Terminator 2, Arnie. Like...
Yeah. So the first question is, did the floodgates open or did they not?
For me, they did, for sure.
No, man. I told you, man. I cannot cry. I literally can't.
Wow.
I reckon you could murder like a zoo full of puppies in front of me with like a hedge trimmer, and I wouldn't cry, you know. You'd put like a baby in a blender. I don't think I'd cry. I'm just not. I'm not that emotional. I really am not. Like I think I told you I haven't cried in like 10.
Yeah. For the record, Claire is looking absolutely horrified by what you just said.
My face just went like, I think my jaw dropped even more.
Yeah, I got away with words. That's why I'm good with poetry. You don't want to read my poems. They're pretty fucked up.
So is this your first time watching this film, Boaz, or is this a rewatch for you?
Yeah, it is actually. Yeah, it is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I've heard of this. I think this is one of the few. There must be like, I mean, Williams. I've watched so many of his films when I was younger, but there are still like a bunch I haven't watched. He did so bloody many movies. But yeah, this is one of the classic ones.
So have you seen this before then, Claire, or is this a rewatch for you?
Yeah, so I've seen this before. When Robin Williams passed, I decided I wanted to watch a lot of his filmography just to kind of remember him. And so this was, I think, one on the list that I decided to watch. And I think it made it a lot more emotional for me, is probably why I cried so much more, because he had passed by that point. And everything else that happens in the last 30 minutes of the movie just makes me into a puddle.
Yeah, so my dad thought it'd be fun for me to watch this as a child.
Oh my.
Did he videotape your reaction? Was he like going to send that to,
No.
You've been framed?
I think it was just one of those points with my dad who's like, shall I get Martin to watch this or not? You know, and he just went for it, I guess. I don't know how old I was. I was like, I can't remember, like 12 or something, 10. And I didn't know that kids were capable of committing suicide. I didn't know that was possible before watching this film. So literally the floodgates opened for me, and I was this absolute state when I watched this film. And I think my dad definitely regretted me watching it. And I was so emotional that my dad literally had to help me upstairs to my bedroom because I was so devastated by what happened. Yeah. So
you're not traumatized at all, right?
Oh no. Well, I don't think so anyway. We need to see a doctor about that. I'm not sure. But
yeah, you can't watch Midsummer Night's Dream or anything like that without losing your shit. Right?
I've seen a lot of Shakespeare plays, never that one.
Really? Probably because of this. Yeah, just
Maybe because my dad never bought me a ticket.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was a very profound experience for me as a kid, and I don't think I've actually watched it since until now.
Wow.
I don't know whether I was just afraid to watch it again, or I never really came across it, or wanted to watch it again. So I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit apprehensive going into this again, watching it, but I was a bit teary, but certainly not as much as I cried when I was small. So. But yeah, this film is quite remarkable for me. So, what happens in Dead Poets Society, Boaz?
Dead Poets Society is set in a like a really posh school, and it kind of follows the students at this school, and their curriculum is really very formal, and there's no outside the box thinking, and it's very routine, and everything's planned out, and their parents have planned out their futures and just everything. So it's really quite academic and really boring and very sterile. And they get a new teacher of poetry called Mr. Keating, who's Robin Williams, who is he's very, very passionate about poems, and he has a very unorthodox method of teaching to get the kids to sort of free their minds. Under his guidance, they start basically like taking his adage on board that they should like seize the day and just do what they love and screw the rules and think for themselves. So they form a Dead Poet Society, which is something Keating did at his old school when he was a kid, and they go to the woods every night and recite poetry and hang around and just have fun. And yeah, it just follows their adventures as they're like taking his inspiration to try and like live a free life in this very kind of prison-like school.
So initial reactions to this, Claire? What did you make of this?
I think when I first saw it, I really enjoyed it up until the awful scene happens at the end, and then I was mortified and very heartbroken by what takes place. But up until then, I felt very passionately about I'm glad they're becoming free thinkers and getting to do what they want. But there's very much an ominous thing in the back of my mind, at least, where I was like, this is not going to end well because they're going to get attention from the school and the administration, and they're not going to like this. So I knew it was going to be building to something harsh. I didn't expect what does end up happening. And then I just remember being furious and pissed off the rest of the movie until the end, when I was just I don't know, it just makes you want to screw the patriarchy, and just I don't know. It really makes me very passionate.
Down with the system.
Yeah.
Boaz, what's your initial reactions to this one then?
No, I quite liked it. I thought a lot of the kids, Robert Sean Leonard, sorry. And a lot of the kids and Ethan Hawke, and they were great, just great characters, great journeys. I obviously love Robin Williams. I quite liked most of the film. I think you already hinted at what was going to happen before I watched it. And so one of the things that I thought was kind of...
Oh, did I? Oh.
Yeah. So, but, I don't really kind of mind about that. But it is kind of interesting because you don't kind of get a sense... I always got a sense this is going a bit too well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It gets really quite optimistic throughout the film, and you're like, they're just trying stuff. They're living their life. They're taking on this thing, and it's just succeeding. It's succeeding with all of them. And then you're usually in a film... they'll have to go over a hurdle. You could do in the usual structure. It's it's an uphill struggle to get what you want, and then when you get it, everything's fine. But everything's going easy, and then it's it gets really hard towards the end.
Quickly,
it's it flips the order of things, because usually you have the struggle first, and then the victory over the struggle. But it's victories, and then just a huge, basically the most jolly guy there, and the most optimistic, Neil Perry is, I think, the character's name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that his dad goes hard on him and ruins his life, and then he offs himself, and you're like, fucking hell. And then it just gets worse. Just everything goes to shit. You're like, Jesus Christ. So yeah. And it doesn't like come with a resolution where any of that is changed, but it's more like a sort of spiritual victory. Like they haven't, their spirits aren't broken, but like everybody's life is ruined. Like there is no like material success here.
Right.
So I think it's just a very interesting way, to formulate a structure, script structure.
So this is, of course, directed by Peter Weir, one of my favorite film directors for me. I'm still gutted he doesn't make films now. A lot of his films are on my favorite films list. The Truman Show, Master and Commander, Gallipoli, and of course this one. And I find him just a really fascinating director in his films and what kind of styles he goes with. And I think Peter Weir is one of these directors that really does the simple things perfectly. Mm-hmm. Like the way he does coverage is brilliant, where the camera goes in tight on the characters when it really matters, especially when Keating is talking to the kids on a very human, personal level. Like the camera's right there that seems seamless. But he also has like a great style to him too, when the group decide to go to the cave and they've all got like dark hoods on. The night scenes when they're traveling through the woods are beautifully lit with like a hint of slow-mo in there. That really works for me and just adds a little atmosphere and mystery to them getting there. Yeah, he has some really interesting shots that he goes with, and he's very much a director where you don't notice a lot of the directing. You're just really in it, Obviously, you have to kind of notice it for this podcast, but I'm actively looking for it. But certainly, when you watch it, you're like, you don't realize there's like someone orchestrating this film. It just feels very natural to me. Do you get that sense, or do you just see that in a lot of films?
Yeah, it definitely feels seamless. I feel like I'm in the movie almost. I feel like if you can do that as a director, then you've done your job really well. And I also like how in the beginning of the movie, everything seems very firm and starch and like straight nosed and everything. But once Keating is introduced in the movie, things feel a little bit more whimsical. Like the scene when they're running through the forest feels very whimsical to me. And I think it's the music too. But then also when they're in the cave, it gets a little eerie. I mean, it just takes a wildly different tone than at the beginning. And I think that really helps you see these kids start to develop their own opinions about things, their own voice too. So I feel like that's seen in the directing as well.
I feel like Peter Weir is so experimental with his music and sound at times as well, and I don't think he pushes it too much, but I think that's certainly one stylistic element that he kind of likes to play with a lot, working with his composer. Like there's definitely a lot of like electronica stuff going on here. Like he does that a bit in Gallipoli as well to create a lot of atmosphere in those night scenes and when they're in the cave. And there's a weird bit where it wouldn't be for everyone, but when they kind of start rapping about the Congo as they come out the cave, like there's this weird like twanging noise, which for me it works. It works for the tone and what's going on in this film. I'm not sure everyone would do that type of sound effect choice in their film.
Hey, I'm James Lovino, and I'm here to tell you about Alternate Sides, a movie podcast with a twist. I've worked in the film business for 2 decades, but I haven't actually seen that many movies, and this has been driving my frequent collaborator, Sam, a self-confessed film snob, crazy. So every week, while he's stuck in his car trying to avoid getting a parking ticket, thanks to New York City's alternate side parking regulations, we discuss a classic film I've finally just gotten around to seeing. Alternate Sides, a new podcast about movies, parking, and a 25-year friendship, wherever you get your podcasts.
And, I think also, like, there's some simple things. Like, one thing I noticed with, like, Ethan Hawke is a lot of, the camera focuses are always, like, over him. The camera always looks down on him more than it does to other characters. So it's almost like, symbolizing how he feels about himself, like he's small and sort of insignificant. He just doesn't want to, he's not brave. Yeah, I always felt that, like that was kind of a mirror, to how he was feeling. So, it's the camera just basically hinting at his sort of inner turmoil. You definitely get less of that when it focuses on him, like in the later half of the film when he's far more confident than in the first half.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I think that, stuff like that, just using the right, camera angles to sort of accentuate, like, the emotions of the scene, or like the themes or something like that. And, can be done so subtly that you don't really sort of notice.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, really. Like, I think Peter Weir definitely reflects the emotions of what's going on with his camera work, especially when, like, Neil is opening up to Keating about his philosophy on life. Weir goes a bit more unconventional in his directing to reflect the character's outlook and, like, the playfulness of what's going on. There's a scene where, like, Neil steals Todd's poetry and a chase starts around his room, and Peter Weir just puts the camera in the center of a small dorm room and just tracks them around the room at an angle.
It's really good.
So the direction does match the screenplay at times with the feeling of what's going on. There's another example when Keating is trying to get Todd to open up about his poetry, a fantastic scene. And he's got his eyes closed and they're like spinning around, but the camera stays on them for a moment.
Yeah.
And you get that kind of more stylistic points at the most emotional moments for Todd when he's creating his own poetry for the first time. I thought that was just masterfully done by Peter Weir. You can tell I'm a Peter Weir fan.
Yeah, because I do agree. Like, even though the camera is, it's not POV or something, it's going through sort of the same thing, as Ethan Hawke. So it's spinning around them while they're spinning. It's disorientating for you as it is for him. You're getting like flashes of, the picture on the wall, and he's trying to come up with things, and you're getting the camera like moving around him and sort of, do you know what I mean? Like, it's and then you obviously get the basically sort of surprised reactions from like Robin Williams and the class about, oh my god, that was amazing. So which he gets when he opens his eyes of like, oh shit, I'm actually like pretty good. Yeah, so that's pretty good.
I was going to add, I think another camera angle that I really liked was when he asks all the students to like stand up on his desk just to get a different perspective. And you see there's like a shot where it's them looking down, but then also it zooms in on Keating, and you see like them jumping off on either side of him. And he's, really encouraging them to think outside of the box, like you said. And I love like how the camera angle looks like that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I was tempted to stand on my desk to start off this podcast, but I thought, I might cause an injury.
Yeah, probably.
No, I feel like my desk isn't stable.
Yeah, no, I'd snap mine clean in half. Right. And then you're paying for it because, it'd be your idea. It's your fault.
You picked this movie.
It's your fault.
The suicide scene is so well done, where it starts off with like a close-up on his father's shoes neatly together in order, just expressing everything about this character, and then cut to like Neil's clothes on his bed, like all neatly laid out for him. Like the eerie electronic music kicks in and everything's pretty much in slow-mo, and there's definitely like Jesus Christ imagery going on here with like Neil and with his top off, and he puts the crown on his head, which is made of sticks. And when he steals the gun out of his father's drawer, you know exactly what's gonna happen. And then cut to his father waking up in a really sharp motion. And what I found interesting is that you don't actually hear a gunshot.
Nope.
And like for a split second, you think, did he actually kill himself? And then there's like really brilliant, subtle pieces of slow-mo as Mr. Perry is walking down the corridor like he knows what's happened. Then it goes to normal speed, and I love the little shots of seeing the smoke from behind the desk and the gun in Neil's hand. And I love the big slow motion moment when Perry almost dives to Neil. Then immediately it's followed by his parents screaming and sobbing at normal speed. So I love how like we're depicts how like time moves in a strange way sometimes during traumatic events in one's life. So I think it's just constructed in such a brilliant way of just messing with time in a traumatic moment.
Like just the whole ritual of it, you know, as he's preparing. And yeah, I think you're right, like very religious, and the music is great, and just how quiet it is, like you know, in you know, background noise and stuff. Yeah, it's very, very ominous. And even, you know, when it cuts to Ethan Hawke waking up and his friend is above him and just like tears in his eyes, and he's like, you know, what's up? And he's like, he's dead. And at first I was kind of a bit annoyed, because I was like, then it cuts and I was like, hang on a minute, I wanted to see Ethan Hawke's expression. But then they're outside in the snow, and like that's when he sort of like, he's trying to be calm and just be like, oh, he would have liked like this, you know, outside. And then he just kind of breaks down, and I was like, fucking hell. I thought that was pretty good as well.
Claire, what did you like about those scenes?
So when I watched this for the first time, I obviously didn't know that it was going to lead into Neil committing suicide. And so, but like as I'm watching it, I realized something terrible is about to happen. And then it was when I saw the gun where I was like, I see where this is going. And it was definitely emotional. And the fact that you don't see it, you just see like this very fast up, like zoomed in shot on his father when he wakes up. And then everything that unfolds after that, I think, is really well done. And the slow zoom that happens when he finally sees his son on the ground, I feel like does a really great job in capturing that shock of what his father must be experiencing in that moment without like actually like spelling it out. It does a really good job visually telling it to you. And then, everything that happens once all of the other boys find out that he has died. Like, I think this is one of the best performances from Ethan Hawke in this moment, because like he's just like, he pukes and then he's like, his father did it, and they're trying to convince him no, and then he just like runs away, and he just like is slipping on the snow. It just feels so desperate and so heartbreaking, and you just see him like run all the way down to a pier in this like white, beautiful, perfect snow. But it's such a terrible thing that's happening at this moment.
Which I think is a great contrast, you know, have him just like go through this horrible experience in like such a beautiful landscape.
I did feel myself being a bit worried for Todd as well, because like, is he going to do something stupid as well in that moment? You know, because he's running towards the pier. I mean, is he going to jump off? Like, oh God, please don't, you know?
Yeah.
But also I find it really interesting that they have the shot of of Neil's parents like outside of the door, so it's kind of just through the doorway. So there's a little bit of separation there of just leaving them to for a private moment kind of thing, and not being like right in their face. I don't think you need that at all. So I think it's really beautifully done. Favorite scenes or shots, people? Claire?
I mean, I think some of my favorite scenes are, I mean, other than the ending, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but all the unconventional lessons that Keating goes through with his students, you know, like I think the first one that I really love is when they're reading how to understand poetry in their book. And it is a very like analytical view of poetry. Like it's judged on a line graph basically of how good a poetry is, which is totally ridiculous. Like poetry is up to the person who's reading it in a lot of cases. And so he says, what I want you to do is rip out that page. And, you know, everyone's very hesitant at that point because that's probably unheard of for that school. And so they all finally start ripping it out. And Keating's like, I don't hear enough rips. And so he comes around with a trash can.
Keep ripping.
Yeah, rip. And then another teacher walks in.
Those were cool shots as well, where you got this basically like a slow amount of shots of them ripping. Oh, should I be doing this? To like this smash cut of which is just so satisfying.
Definitely.
Boaz, favorite shot or scene?
Oh man, favorite scene, probably the end. I think favorite shot though, I got some kind of unconventional shots I quite like.
Okay,
So one, and it's kind of a random shot. It doesn't help the story in any way. But when one of the boys is cycling to school, and you got this like really like wide shot, and there's all these birds that are on this, like grassy hill that he rides down the grassy hill, and all the birds take off.
I love that too.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm like, Jesus, have they got to find, or did they hire these birds? They got to.
Must be hard to direct birds like that.
Yeah, man, it's just going to be crazy. And then I like when all those birds go up, and then you've got a cut to inside the school, and there's all the students around the banisters, the stair banisters.
Oh yeah.
And you've just got the camera sort of just circling around just to get them all, and then continuing on its way. And I thought those two shots I really liked, and for some reason they stuck in my head. But they're probably not essential to essential scenes.
My favorite shot is where it's a very simple one, where a man playing bagpipes on like the little pier, and the camera tilts down, and it's all in like silhouette, but like the background is all pink in the morning, and you can't see where the river starts and the sky begins. So beautiful that shot.
There are a lot of landscape shots that are just like kind of trickled in throughout that are very quick, but are also very beautiful.
Directing score, Claire, what are you going for?
I'm going to give this a 9.5 out of 10. I think this is a really well directed movie from like I said, I feel very much in the movie. At no point did I feel like I'm out of the movie, and I feel like it takes you along the journey very nicely.
Yeah.
Boaz, what should we go with then? I'm not sure I was going as high as that, but a 9s I would happily go into.
Do you want to go 9.1?
9.2 maybe?
Sure.
Yeah, cool. Right, screenplay then. I did really enjoy like the opening scenes of this film, where it's really rammed home that this prestigious school is all about like tradition, honor, respect, and all those things. You have some daddy issue stuff going on with like Neil Perry, so the students do act like teenagers messing about a little bit in his room. But
I'm reminded about that bit where he barges in and he's like, "Is that a radio?" He's like, "No, science project," or something like that.
Yeah. But they're all very obedient to the adult characters, and all the while you're waiting for Robin Williams' character to arrive in their class, and when they're all waiting for him, he just walks in and then just walks out. And he's like, "Come on, what are you doing?" And then all the students are like, "What the hell?" Then you get like a brilliant scene about like seizing the day. Like John Keating makes them lean in to hear what the old students are saying from the photos, and he whispers to them. And you're like, this is completely not what the school expects, nor to the students. So it's just a really great introduction scene, if you will, for Robin Williams' character.
Yeah, I really love how Keating balances humor, or I guess I should say Robin Williams too, balances humor with seriousness. And there are so many moments where you can tell that it is Robin Williams, like where he does, I don't know if it's improv or, or it was scripted, but he'll say things like when they were ripping out the pages of the book, he goes, "It's not the Bible. You're not going to go to hell for ripping it out." So he has like that side of him, but then he also has the very introspective of like, why do we read and write poetry? It's not because it's cute. It's because we're members of the human race, and goes into this really like elegant speech. So I just love how he has both in his character.
I really love like the next scene with Keating's class as well. Like you're waiting for as you kind of said earlier, Claire, you're waiting for the quirk in his teaching to arrive when they're talking about the chart, and then they rip all the pages out. But I also like it when McAllister arrives demanding to know what's going on, and when Keating comes back into the room, he doesn't care what McAllister thinks. He's just polite and says, "Keep ripping, everyone, keep ripping." Even though McAllister is still in the room, he does eventually go. So Keating may be in this school, but for him, it's very much him and these kids with his teaching. It doesn't really matter where he's at. This is how I teach my kids.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what's around me. Like nothing is going to get in the way.
Absolutely.
But he does it in such a charming and like great characterful way.
Yeah, there's actually I really like that scene where they're like discussing teaching methods, and he's very much against, because he's like, I've seen what you were doing with your students. It's like I don't really approve,
He's a realist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I like that where like he makes his own quote, like McAllister, where he was like, they're not all going to be great thinkers and what have you, and they'll be annoyed with you when they find out they're not all going to be, they're destined for greatness. And then he was like, show me the heart unfettered by foolish dreams and I'll show you a happy man. And then Keating continues with like, but only in their dreams can men truly be free. 'Twas always thus and always thus will be. McAllister is like, is that Tennyson? And he's like, no, Keating. I really like that.
I love that.
Great moment.
Yeah, just incredible wit.
And I think Keating, he went to the same school, so he's not unaware of like what he's doing, and he knows that like it is a very traditional school, but he's just like, I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I feel like that awareness comes through even more like the more you watch this film. He's very much aware of where he is in the school. I think throughout like the film, like one by one, the student characters buy into Keating's philosophy, but everything, as you kind of said at the top, but everything seems to be very positive and good. Nothing's going wrong at all, but they're surrounded by tradition in the environment, the clothes they're wearing. There's a scene in a courtyard area where they're just walking around, and there's a shot of one of the older teachers just looking at them through a window, and Keating says very knowingly, now we all have a great need for acceptance, but you must trust that your beliefs are unique, your own, even though others may think them odd or unpopular, even though the herd may go, that's bad. I think Keating is very aware of where he is when he's saying that. So there is a sense of impending doom a little bit in this film from this point onward, especially, I would say.
Especially like when like they know they're being watched, when one of them sends like a Dead Poets Society anonymous letter into the school column or whatever.
Yeah, having girls go to the school too.
I thought that was a pretty great moment where he just like owns up to it in the middle of assembly.
He like has a telephone out and he's like, yeah.
yeah. I like that. It's for God. It's from God. Yeah.
It's for you.
Yeah, that was funny. But yeah, so they're being watched closely. Yeah, so there is that kind of dread in the back of your mind. But yeah, that was a pretty badass moment. I like when Keating even comes there to sort of not congratulate him, but like to tell him off. Doesn't mean you should do like stupid things and what have you. But then even after that, like telling off, he's still really charming. Where he's like, that isn't daring. Like if you had said it was a collect, like you said it was a collect call. If it was direct, it would have been daring or something like that. And then he leaves.
That was funny.
Yeah, that was quite funny.
I think Neil himself also has like some great dialogue too as he goes along, and which is like I think the end super more heartbreaking because you see him come alive way more.
Oh yeah.
Once he realizes like he wants to be an actor and that's his dream, and he doesn't care like what his dad says, and he forges the permission slip from his dad and everything. And I like the relationship between Todd and Neil too, and how that continues to grow. Todd's very quiet, like we said, and then gains confidence throughout the movie. And then you get a little bit more of a background into Todd's life about how his parents like don't seem to really care about him, and they give him the desk set and he's like, I had this last year. And so Neil is basically like, this is very aerodynamic, and then like has Todd chuck it over the edge, and Neil's like, don't worry, you'll get a new one next year. So I liked that.
I thought that was brilliant. That was a really great scene. It was incredibly heartfelt and yet like hilarious at the same time.
Yeah, their connection and relationship is really great, because certainly Todd is the last one to kind of buy into this philosophy. Cameron is another one that is not sure about it, but certainly Todd is the last one, I would say. But Neil is the one that kind of gets him into it,
Absolutely.
not Keating.
Yeah.
Whereas for everyone else, it's Keating, but no, for Todd, it's Neil. So I find it really great that their connection is so strong and makes it even more devastating when he kills himself for Todd. You know, it's heartbreaking, and yeah. And like after the suicide of Neil, there's still like 20 minutes left of this film to go, and you're like, it can't just be all downbeat from here. Like the school is pointing all the blame towards Keating and making sure the students sign a form to say it was him, creating a scapegoat, which of course it wasn't Keating at all. You know, it's quite heartbreaking as well that Cameron cracks and stands with the school and not his friends. But I do kind of quite like that. The fact that they made that decision, because it feels kind of more real to me that someone might have a different opinion, you know, protecting his education in such a prestigious school. But it's hard to watch seeing them fight as well in such an emotional moment. You know, Charlie ends up punching Cameron for it.
He deserves it, though. He's a prick.
Yeah. And then Charlie is expelled.
Yeah.
So they're in such a dour situation emotionally.
And that is such a shame as well, because Charlie was a great character as well. Like, you know, he was like the cool, too cool for school, like suave, you know, we can get loads of chicks doing this, like being a prankster, just amazing character. And then, and as soon as all the bad shit happened, you know, the death and the school blame, and he's gone. And it's like, Jesus, that's unfair. That's so unfair.
I know.
Yeah.
I was really upset that he like wasn't in the very last scene, because like it felt very much like that's that group.
He should have broke through the window. Like he's just like in the hedges, just comes in.
I need to stand on the desk.
Yeah, he actually first he should drop kick Cameron, then stand on the desk. You know? Yeah, take his head clean off.
Yeah.
He very much stood with his beliefs, like the entire, like he didn't break from character. Like he was like, I'll just get expelled. Versus the others, I think, were a little bit more able to be influenced.
Just afraid, yeah.
And I think that's why like the last scene is so powerful when Todd defies the head teacher and stands up on the desk, you know, saying, "Oh, Captain, my captain," and most of them stand up, and even the one who wrote The Cat sat on the mat stands up, and it's just like, again, and it's kind of the film Spartacus moment. It's just such a powerful moment of just supporting and stand buying Keaton, even though there's kind of nothing they can do about the situation to change it.
I love it.
And it is just so sad and frustrating as well, as we've said, that Cameron doesn't stand up either. It's just like, oh, come on, dude, stand up. Like, come on, you know you want to.
And I love, because even when they're all up there, the camera goes to Cameron, and he's just like, you know, you're like the struggle, and it's like, oh shit, and he doesn't do it, and I'm like, you sniveling little shit. Like, I really hate that character with all my being.
Even the kid with the snotty nose, like, got up and did it. Like, I mean...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Even he got up.
I wasn't, like, pissed at Cameron. I was more just, like, frustrated. I'm like, come on, dude. You know you want to stand up. Just do it.
Yeah. You're disappointed. I am furious at him. You're the Judas of the group.
Yeah.
Any favourite lines, people?
I think, I mean... everything Keating says as far as like carpe diem, seize the day, and make your lives extraordinary, I think is really great. I just love how the last line of the movie too, following up on that scene, is just him saying, "Thank you, boys, thank you." And he realizes like it's not their fault that they were forced to do this, but just to see, like, I think as him being a teacher of these students, that he made an impression on them, like, I think was really wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you, boys. Is definitely another crying moment for me. For sure. I actually quite like one of the bits of poetry near the beginning where Keating says, I think it's in that first scene where he says, like, "Gather ye rosebuds while ye may, old time is still a flying. And this same flower that smiles today, tomorrow will be dying." You know, I think it kind of like encapsulates the whole film. But I also love "Begone, J. Evans Pritchard, PhD." Begone.
Yeah, or when he does like different accents of like doing Shakespeare.
Oh yeah,
that was pretty funny. Marlon Brando and
So good.
There's a bunch
John
of different
Wayne.
John Wayne. Yeah, that was hilarious. I think one of my favorite things was it's a pretty long sort of line, but I like that. We don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we are members of the human race, and the human race is filled with passion, and so on and so forth. Is a pretty powerful, paragraph. I think about the human spirit and stuff. I'd talk about one character that is pretty weird, like. Oh, what was it? Is it Knox? Is it the name? Who's like desperately in love with that guy?
Chris.
How did her boyfriend not stab him in the throat? I was like, how did he survive this?
Really did.
Yeah, he could have killed him like a million times.
Right.
Yeah, those scenes like at the party are so cringy. I was like, oh my God, what are you doing?
Yeah, I was like, don't do it, you fucking idiot. You're going to die.
Like when Knox kisses Chris on the forehead, you're like, oh my God, you're at a party. Everyone can see what you're doing.
Yeah, right. Goddamn moron.
I think like Peter Weir is so good at like constructing this really awkward atmosphere as well in a few scenes with Knox and Chris.
And then he does it in the classroom as well.
Oh, that's so cringe.
That was so cringe. Like, to be honest, I was thinking, like, there is no way in hell that she is into you. Like, especially you've done this twice, embarrassed her. Forget about, like, even the boyfriend stabbing him in the neck. Like, why didn't she just shoot him? I'm like, how did he survive this? But obviously, I don't know.
It's something, right?
As stupid as he is, Yeah, so it worked out.
But I thought it was great that they held hands at the theater. Though I was like, oh,
I know.
Yeah, that was sweet. That was sweet. Yeah, I like that. That was nice.
I hope they're together still after the end of it.
I actually also really like that scene because I knew something was off. Where like he's spilling his guts out, Neil, and it's like my dad, da da da, and he's like, you're just gonna have to have the conversation with him. You're just gonna have to say this is what it is, and like let me live my life, and whatever. But he says, yeah, you got to hash it out. And that the next day he's like, did you talk with him? And he's like, yeah. He wasn't happy, but I told him what's what. And I like how, because I could even say this in directing, I missed to say that, but where the camera just kind of like lingers on Neil. And I was just like, there's something not right. I don't think he fucking did say anything.
Yeah. Well, in that scene, you can tell, and I think Keaton can tell as well, that Neil is not telling the truth.
Yeah, he's not telling the truth. I think I think that's one of the. It probably would be a regret of his, like at the end of the film when everything happens, of like, man, I should have pushed that.
When you see how Keating reacts to Neil's death, I think is also like heartbreaking and also well done. In that there's no dialogue. He's just like walking to his desk and opens up Neil's desk and sees the book and the Dead Poets Society book and is reading it. And then you just see like Robin Williams Keating just break down. And I think that's when I broke down too. I was just like a mess. It was awful.
Yeah. It's really interesting, that scene as well, of what that suggests, certainly in Keating's past as well. Like, what was he like in his time as a student at the school when he's breaking down? Because obviously he deeply regrets and is very guilty that he's allowed the kids to see his book of the Dead Poets Society. So it's really interesting that he, in my mind, he could have maybe stopped it, but that would be against his philosophy on life as well. Yeah. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Just that, the fact that he's just really emotional in that moment.
Definitely.
But I think my favorite line is, gentlemen, what are the 4 pillars? Travesty, horror, decadence, and excrement.
Yeah, that was funny.
That was good.
Screenplay score, Claire, from Why the Flick? What are you going for Dead Poets Society?
I am going to give this an 8.5 out of 10.
Okay.
I think it's a really well done screenplay for the most part. And like I said, I feel like it does a good job balancing moments of humor from Keating with moments of wisdom. And I think each character gets some really great dialogue in there as well.
Is there any criticisms you have with the script then for you? Or?
I think my main criticism is that some parts, like, to me, just felt like they maybe dragged on like a little bit too long in certain scenes, maybe particularly like when they're in the cave. So, but it's pretty minor, I would say, as far as that goes.
I do kind of like as well that they commit a lot of time to a lot of the students' arcs in this, like, you know, Knox, Charlie, Todd, and Neil, and you've got Cameron in there as well. You know, they all have the kind of their own separate stories within this, which is kind of really confident, I would say.
Yeah. The other thing too is like we don't ever hear from Neil's dad after the fact, which I mean, might just be like the case. I'm not saying I dislike that part of it, but there's nothing else from him other than you hear like he wants an investigation done, and you can understand from that fact that he's not willing to accept any blame. But there's nothing else mentioned from him personally.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you could even like slot an entire other film in between the end. Like there's so much that can be addressed. But yeah, I get what you mean.
What else would you address then?
Well, man, it's just...
Or is it a separate podcast?
Yeah, maybe a separate podcast. But yeah, no, I would have liked maybe more scenes of... Because I know it's the kids' story, but like Keaton coming to terms with this, and maybe even have him like feel really guilty or needs to be encouraged or something, or even try to fight for his career. But, you know, I understand like the focus is the kids, you know. But yeah, just see what was going on with the other parents as well, like his dad as well.
Yeah, I really like this script, so I'm willing to go like a 9.3, 9.4 or something like that, Boaz. Any objections to that? Or
I think the only you know, because it focuses on a lot of kids. I think the only one kid I didn't like his story as much, because it was just, you know, it just didn't seem like it would really happen, is Knox. It's like that would never happen. That would never fucking happen.
You know? What do you think? He would have been killed?
I think he would have been killed. He would have been killed like maybe 4 or 5 times. I think if anybody watched this film as an impressionable kid and was like, that's how I woo the lady of my dreams, you're going home in a fucking ambulance. Like, there is no way that's going to work.
An insight in what school you went to as a child, maybe?
Yeah.
Rough as hell.
There were a lot of ambulance visits, yeah.
Crikey.
But yeah, no, besides that, I liked all the other kids' stories. Yeah, I'd go maybe in the 9s.
9.2 then?
Yeah, 9.2. I would say, like, maybe just this little bit, but it doesn't really matter. But they were very accepting of Keating straight away. And I was surprised at that. Like, I would have thought maybe a little pushback, because this guy is pretty wild. But they just, like, accepted it.
There's definitely varying degrees of that.
It's really Neil that is enamored with him, like, straight off the bat. So I do agree with that. Yeah, you know, there is some pushback with some of the kids. So, you know, maybe I'm a little wrong there.
But I don't mind that at all, because he's very much completely obedient by his father.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's got the most positive outlook, but the most fucking dominating, like, suffocating life. Like, you know, his dad is like the minutia of what he can do and what he can study. So you're like, yeah, okay, I sort of see he'd go with that. So, you know, maybe that's not really a good criticism.
Right. Acting then. I love the acting from Robert Sean Leonard as Neil when he's doing his last monologue in A Midsummer Night's Dream in the play, and he's like locked eyes on his father, Kurtwood Smith. It's like the first time he's fighting back against his father in a way, you know, like, no, I am going to star in this play and you can't do anything about it. And when he's done, everyone cheers and claps, like, so happy for him, apart from his dad. And it kind of shows, you know, a lot about what his father is about in that moment as well, when the whole room is celebrating.
Yeah.
You know, like, this is not over. And when Keating comes to congratulate Neil, Mr. Perry, his father, interrupts Keating and says, "Stay away from my boy." And then in the car, like, Neil doesn't look upset. There's still like a slight smile on his face, like he can now handle his father in a little way. And there's an extended shot on Robin Williams' face as they drive away, saying the opposite, like, this is not going to be good for Neil, you know, looking so worried. Yeah, I thought that was just a great piece of storytelling in the acting for me.
Yeah, I think him as a character, it's just incredibly tragic, because we see him come into his own throughout the beginning and middle of the movie, and he's so passionate about what he wants to do, and he's like, this is my calling, this is what I want to do, and my dad's gonna see this, he's gonna let me be an actor. And then, you know, he does get the biggest applause at the play, So he gets that validation from everybody but his father. And then it's almost like his best and worst night because he gets that standing ovation applause. But then his father says, I'm going to send you to military school tomorrow, basically. And then he commits suicide and everything just comes crashing down for him. And he, by the end, you know, when you see him walking through the house, he just doesn't have any of that passion left in him.
Yeah, Robert Sean Leonard is really interesting in this film. I think certainly there's moments just before, like, he steals like the poetry assignment from Todd, and just before he does that, Neil is kind of just like, "What the hell? What do you mean you're not going to come with us to the Dead Poets Society at the cave?" And he's kind of really annoyed at him because he's not a particularly like shy or repressed character when he's around his friends, but Todd certainly is, and certainly Ethan Hawke does an incredible job too of just looking like really shy and feeling very shy and closed off to everyone. And so I feel like the chemistry between those two actors especially was really great and very palpable. It just felt real and felt so believable when Todd does open up a lot more because of Neil. You get a lot of that through the acting, not necessarily through the screenplay. Any other acting moments we like? Or?
I would say I really, of the group, love Dalton. Just, I know we've talked about him a lot, but just that he's this rebel. And yeah, like there's so many great highlights with him, like when he's in the cave and he plays his saxophone, and like you think he doesn't know how to play it and it's awful sounding, but then he like plays this very beautiful melody and they're like, we didn't know you knew how to play. And he said, well, I played the clarinet and then I hated it, so I went to the saxophone. That part. And then also when Keating is trying to get them all to have their own walk and not walk in uniform. And then Dalton says, I'm exercising my right not to walk. And I was like, that's perfect.
That was funny. Yeah, I do love his whole demeanor. Like, he is definitely the coolest one of the group, and he just kind of like oozes that out like so effortlessly. Yeah, I thought he was really cool. I liked him.
I was also going to add Kurtwood Smith, who plays Neil's dad. Not that I like him, but he makes me hate him so much. And I feel like if you do that as an actor, like, you've done a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because he is very like dominant in a scene.
He doesn't crack or anything.
Absolutely.
He's very like cold in his acting, you know.
Yeah.
You feel like you can't penetrate him emotionally of how you want him to act in certain situations.
Yeah. He's like projecting his own experiences onto Neil because he says, like, I didn't have these chances like you do, and I've made these sacrifices to get you here, and you're not appreciative of that. And so I feel like he's dealing with his own stuff that he's putting onto his son as a way to like make up for it.
Yeah. I think like Robin Williams is like perfectly cast as Keating in this film as well. Like I can't imagine anyone else playing this role. And it's not too dissimilar to the role he's playing in Jumanji in a way where like Keating is the teacher and he wants to be respected as such. There are certainly elements that we've kind of talked about of like, he's not just one of the students, he is the teacher as well. But at the same time, he's also has this level of just being like the students as well at times. Like he's playing football with them, joining in. There's a scene too that you get in most Robin Williams films where you've mentioned Boaz, where he's doing impressions of Marlon Brando and John Wayne, like really good ones too, you know. And you would think that this should not be in this film, you know, in a film like this, but because of the chemistry they have and the tone that Weir has created here, there's an element of equal ground between Keating and the students. It's just works in that scene completely. There
was something else I was thinking of too between Jumanji and this movie is just like what it has to say about father-son relationships and how that ends up, you know, obviously in Jumanji it had a nice ending and ended up working out and the father like listened to his son, and this one we did not have that. But I was reading some trivia about this, and just Robin Williams' own relationship with his father. And he had talked about how his father encouraged him to do what he wanted because his father and grandfather did not have a great relationship. They didn't have that. Like his dad didn't have the ability to do what he wanted. I think his grandfather actually had passed on. And so his father had to really pick up the slack for that and like be the quote unquote man of the house. And so because of that, his father encouraged Robin Williams to go into acting or do what he wanted to do at least. And so I'm glad that we got that.
Yeah.
You can definitely see that in his performance emotionally in almost all of his films for sure. So we go in Full House again as our favourite performance for Robin Williams, or anyone different?
Do you know? I think I'll go with the guy that plays Neil Perry,
Robert Sean Leonard.
Yeah, I think I'll go with him actually.
Okay,
I think he's probably my favourite performance. But yeah, Robin Williams probably a close second.
What made it like his favourite performance for you? Is it that last scene?
I don't think it's only the last scene. Like I think he was definitely one of my favourite characters. Like I just feel like one, he's so positive and bright-eyed, and yet like you can switch on a dime of being incredibly docile and really shit scared of his dad whenever he's around or he's mentioned. You've got like the inner turmoil that he's experiencing, and his love for the theater, his performance in the theater. Even though we haven't mentioned it, like when he tries to stand up to his dad, and then that just goes nowhere, and then obviously the entire scene of his death, which not only I think is cinematically done really well, but you've seen him go through quite a lot. I think more so than many of the other characters, and then you have this sort of payoff for it. And I just think he did a really good job with what his character's meant to be, like the center of the group. Yeah, I just really liked his performance. So, and that isn't to say anything against anybody else or Robin Williams, who I think is amazing, and I love Robin Williams. But for me, I liked him a little more.
How dare you?
Well, it's a free country.
Not in this school, it's not. Acting score, Claire, what are you going for?
So for this movie, I think I'm going to give it an 8.9 out of 10 for acting. I feel like most of the actors that we have talked about are really why I give it this high score. Like Robin Williams just does such a great job, and like I said, he brings this funniness that he has in all of his movies. But he's also incredibly deep. And I think this is one of the movies where you see like he has range. He's not just a comedic actor. He can go into these deep roles and take you along with him there. And then everyone else is also really great. Robert Sean Leonard, for all of the reasons that you just mentioned. Ethan Hawke too. Gail Hansen, who plays Dalton, is like probably my third favorite character of the group. I think with Ethan Hawke's character, I would have maybe liked to have seen just like a little bit more, I don't know, rebelliousness, or just something like where he was also finding himself or something he was passionate about. I don't know if we got that as much as, say, with Neil.
Yeah.
But again, he has like that incredible arc at the end where he's the first one to stand on the desk. So I think that also makes up for it a little bit.
What should we go with then, Boaz? Scrape into the 9s or keep it into the 8s?
Oh man,
I would go 9s as well, to be honest.
Yeah?
I think everyone is amazing in this. I really, even the hateful characters as well, like Mr. Perry and Cameron to a certain extent, I think they're all great. And also just like the camaraderie and the chemistry between all of them, I think works so well.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any weak link here in terms of the acting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would go like 9.4, 9.2, something like that.
I think I would go like maybe a straight 9.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy with that.
I'm slightly more leaning to sort of like the tipping point of like 8.99 sort of thing, but like definitely in that range.
Right, let's add up the scores then for Dead Poets Society. Dead Poets Society gets a very, very impressive score of 54.3. So it beats off Jumanji with 49.3. So I think Dead Poets Society goes straight to the top of our new list for 2023. Not difficult, frankly, with our previous episode.
Yeah.
Next episode, we'll be doing another Legends episode on maybe Meryl Streep films. Haven't finalized it yet. And we may have a guest from the Love of Cinema podcast. Maybe. Still need to figure things out with that one. Claire, you have been amazing. Thank you so much for your patience and your time. You have been amazing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry I was late, like super late.
Oh, no worries.
This is your opportunity again to talk about your podcast.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me on. This was great. I had an awesome time talking about these two movies with you guys.
Thank you.
Again, we are Why the Flick podcast. We review different movies, and we had just finished, like I said, our second season in October. So we are going to be picking up our third season very soon. So
Cool.
to find out when we will be back, you can follow us on social. We are at Why the Flick on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And then in the meantime, you can catch up on all of our previous episodes. We are on most major podcasting platforms, but Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts are the main ones. So, and also we have a Letterboxd account where we share all of our movie reviews too.
Yeah, we've started a letterbox now. Well, I've started one, so I'm kind of getting into that a little bit more.
Yeah, I started a personal one this year too, because I'm going to try to review every movie I watch. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Cool. Right. It's time to say goodbye, people. So goodbye, Claire. You've been amazing. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right.
And it's goodbye from Nuwanda. Bye-bye.
Yes. Do the bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I don't know what the fuck that was. Whatever.
You're going back to the Congo? Or
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm just mixing it up.
Some poetry.
Yep. Jungle drums
Okay.
of Jumanji and, the beatbop stylings of Nuwanda.
Keep that board game away from me. Bye-bye. That's it for part 2. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 1 if you haven't done so already. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell us what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for Twitter at FVF_podcast. If you do, we'll give you a shout out on the next episode. If you're feeling really generous, you can buy us a one-off coffee at our Buy Me a Coffee account. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.